The New York newspaper strike is now in its 75th day. The situation has long since passed the point of public toleration. The essence of free collective bargaining in this country is a sense of responsibility and restraint by both sides, not merely an effort by one side or the other to break those who sit across the bargaining table from them. It is clear in the case of the New York newspaper strike that the local of the International Typographical Union and its president, Bertram Powers, insofar as anyone can understand his position, are attempting to impose a settlement which could shut down several newspapers in New York and throw thousands out of work. Collective bargaining has failed. The most intensive mediation has failed. This is a situation which is bad for the union movement all over the country, bad for the newspaper managements, and bad for the New York citizens, more than 5 million of them, who are newspaper readers. In my view, one solution to this prolonged strike, if no immediate progress is made, would be for the striking printers, companies, and other involved unions to submit their differences to independent determination of some kind. I cannot see any other alternative which at present would bring about a solution to this critical labor dispute, which has already had a vital effect on the economic life of this great city of New York.
Are they pretty mad, the others?
Oh, they're furious, Dorothy. But
because Dorothy went through 80 days for nothing, didn't she?
Yes, she should have done this a lot sooner if she was going to do it. However, I thought you'd like to know very much off the record that things look fairly good. I think the circumstances for a settlement are better now than they ever were. And I think it started with your statement, actually. There are a couple things that have happened. First, the prospect that the mayor might make a recommendation is something that the publishers don't want at all. We've indicated to them pretty much what we might do, and this has been a spur to get them moving. Now, I know, and publishers don't know this, that the Union Executive Council had a meeting out in Colorado Springs, and they voted to do everything to bring this thing to a quick conclusion. Now, they met yesterday, and they pretty much settled one of the thorniest issues, and that's the question of outside tape. You know, the automation issue, so-called. And they're going back at it today. Now, I think the publishers are a little punch-drunk almost because of this Dorothy thing. They may not want to move too fast so as not to give the impression that they're too eager for a settlement, but they're dying for one. And I think that it ought to come this weekend or very shortly afterwards.
So they finally go for about 13.5?
Well, I think that they'll do better on the money. They won't be able to settle it without the hours reduction. They finally got themselves around to that. Now, what they're thinking about is a 3-year contract instead of 2. And they're prepared at this moment to offer the hours in the 3rd year. And then to have some sort of an additional monetary amount in the 3rd year. So the total settlement won't be bad. I think it could be under 13. For 2 years, but it'll be more for the 3.
All those papers will end up at 10 cents?
I don't know. I think this is one of the things that has been so difficult. There is, within the publishers' organization, this fight going on between the Times and the News and the Mirror and the Tribune. The Mirror and the Tribune wanted to dime before this began. And the Times and the News are the ones that can afford a settlement the best. So, in effect, the others have been saying to them, unless you do something about the price of the paper, you better not negotiate us out of business. And, of course, these are things I suppose they don't like to talk about too much. I haven't indicated that they are talking about them. But, I don't think there'll be any change immediately. They'll want to do some reassessing, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was to come shortly afterwards.
Fine, good, Tad. Well, let me know. How's Phil Graham doing?
He sort of quieted down at this end.
You haven't heard from him?
No, I haven't heard from him for the last several days. You said he's around and about. And the publishers were. I think he's been helpful too. They've had so many blows in the funding they've taken as the result of your remarks. They put up a bold front on it. They don't like that at all. And Elmer Brown is here not because we asked him to come, but because his man Pilch suggested that we asked him to come. And in other words, we called Pilch the other evening, and he said, "Isn't this the right time to bring Elmer back?" And he called me the next day, and he said that we had a executive council meeting at the union. And he said, "I want you to know we're going to go all out to get this thing."
Good, fine. Well, give me...
The atmosphere is a good one, and it was an outgrowth of the statements you made, the opportunity that we got from that to say, well, we're going to suggest a settlement, and the desire really of both sides. Elmer doesn't want a suggestion either. It's sort of an affront to their great tradition of bargaining to a conclusion themselves. They don't want a recommendation. The publishers don't want one. They'll take arbitration, but not a recommendation.
I see.
They're afraid that it'll establish a new plateau. So that the pressures on both of them to reach a settlement are really at the best at the moment.
Good, fine, Ted.
Hopeful, but we'll see.
Okay, good. Bye-bye. Hello, Mr. President.
Yeah. How
The New York newspaper thing, I think, is about to break. And yet we've got to handle it at this press conference in terms of what people know. And I've got to tell you this personally. The situation is that there'll be a meeting at 12 o'clock this noon, at which there's some real reason to think they're going to get over the hump as far as Bob's concerned. In the meantime, just to make this fast, it seems to me there are three questions you may be asked. One is whether there's any progress on it, and the situation is such you can well say yes on that. Second, are you going to step in if the talks up there fail? It seems to me the answer to that is you don't think they will fail, and you're certainly not going to assume it. The hardest question is whether, or the most likely question is whether you think the mayor ought to make recommendations to the parties, even though they may not want them. I should think your answer to that would be that you indicated earlier such a third-party proposal may be advisable. If he feels in his mediation that it's a good thing, you would think you would certainly support that conclusion.
I won't get into any criticism of any of the groups.
None at all.
Right. What about the post-publishing? Do I say anything about that? No.
Let's see. I think you just got completely away from that.
Right.
But it broke pretty much about 1:30 this morning.
Who's surrendering?
It's a pretty hard dose for the publishers.
Is it?
Yeah.
Powers is ready to win it.
Pretty substantially. It'll come to about 3 to 4%, even excluding the consideration of the hours. They're going to get their hours. It'll be on a 3-year basis, and it'll amount to about $5 a year increase plus the hours. A little more than that.
What could they have gotten without a strike? About $3?
Without a strike? Yes. Compared with the 5 they could have gotten, nearer 4. Between 3 and 4. 3.5 as a matter of fact.
Okay, good.
So they've gotten that, but it'll have to be played soft because none of this can get out, and there's some suspicion that some of our people over there have been talking with the publishers more than is a good thing.
People there.
Well, I mean around the government, I don't know where. Now you may get a report from Bill Haddad too.
He's trying to get me.
I think it's probably to confirm the fact that Walter Thayer is now apparently willing to go along with this. The publishers are still split, but in any event, I've talked this morning with Ted and with Bob Wagner, and I think what I've given you is right.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, Bob, how are you?
President, how are you?
Very good.
Well, I got a couple hours sleep, I'm sorry.
What'd you do up there finally?
Well, we got it straightened out.
You did?
It was a rough one all night. That fella Powers was something. Elmer Brown was very good. We had something worked out. I guess if Bill Wirtz got a message to you, I said he was the only one that was going to sleep with some peace. He thought everything was straightened out when he did, but we got the publishers to go along with my recommendations, and then Brown and his International Council of the Typographical Union voted unanimously for it, and this Bertram Powers, because he's got his local committee here, or his boys, although they weren't happy at the time, he came in and said, oh, no, he couldn't take it.
He didn't want to settle?
He didn't want to settle on my recommendations.
Yeah.
And Brown, of course, said, well, he saw the weight of the International behind it, all their rules, regulations, and everything else. And Arsdale and myself worked on him for about an hour or two, and then he finally said, well, okay, they would approve. Approve it because the International had and would recommend it to the membership. So we're all...
What would it finally amount to?
$12.27 for 2 years.
Well, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I think they did very well, and the publishers did pretty well, too. And they got 2-year agreement. They go to the 35 hours in the second year. Which to these boys, the printers, doesn't mean much because they can take it out of wash-up time. Now right now they're working with the other unions. They got the wage package, and I think the extra, the publishers calculate that in the second year that'll mean about 38 cents more going to the 35 hours, and so it's about, we say it's 12.27. This runs about 12.6.
Does she have to pay this too?
Well, I assume, yeah. That was the agreement that she'll have to come in. I don't know what he says. He has no deal with her, but I assume they'll go in. They can do all right.
Yeah.
Gosh, boy, they were a sad lot. Too. They have an association, but everyone's watching each other.
Yeah.
Particular angle. But
when do they start publishing?
What?
When do they start publishing?
Well, they got to clear up a few items with Powers' union, which are the cleanup items, about how this affects vacation and so on.
Yeah.
So that'll be fast. And they can clean up these other unions, and then they have to have a vote. I understand some of Powers' fellows are stalling a bit, but I think we can get Brown to get them moving, and they ought to get going. I should think in 3 or 4 days.
Oh, God.
But it's all over now, and we kept our friend in Albany out of it. He was dying. He had a fella there all the time. He was ready to move in. But
well, you ought to be pleased. That's a good job, Bob.
Yeah. Well,
I think everybody thought about it.
I wanted to know because we followed, your suggestion on the third-party mediation, and everything worked out all right. And I wanted to assure you that our main concern was to get it settled. I know how I talked to Dick Donahue up there last Saturday after dinner. I had a run-do for Joe Boyan, and I told him we'll get it straightened out, and we'll keep that boy in Albany out of here.
Right.
He's dying.
Yeah.
Dying.
I'm glad they're starting to print about him again.
Yeah, well, he's getting it on the radio all the time, but he was just, he and Javitz, were constantly in touch with these fellas.
Yeah.
But they realized they're practical business fellas, and they realized they weren't going to get anywhere with him, and this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So we got that out of the way for you, and we'll get your papers for you.
Okay, that's good. That's terrific, Bob.
I talked to Bobby yesterday. I'm going to see him up here tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
Fine, Mr. President.
Fine, Bob.
Take good care of yourself.
Good work.
Ready?